Brightworm Studio. It's been such a pleasure seeing all of your Henson workshop adventures. You have no idea. If it's been a pleasure to you, just know that we're all like running around with hearts coming out of our eyes every time we bring up Henson. And I marvel at your ability to be cool to the extent that you do. And I'd absolutely lose it. How did you fall in love with Jim Henson's work originally? Is there a Henson movie prop you'd love to build someday? Oh, the Trident Frog Killer from the Muppet movie absolutely would be something I'd love to build. I loved that there was a scary villain in that movie. Kill frogs. So Sesame Street came out in 1969, 1970. And its original charge was 1/3 Muppets, 1/3 animation, and 1/3 live action. And my father was one of the first animators hired to make those animated interstitials that ran on Sesame Street. So I didn't just grow up on Sesame Street. It was absolutely the water that I grew up swimming in. The Muppets were part of my earliest childhood memories. And it used to be that after Sesame Street, the Electric Company would air. And when the Electric Company aired, the Electric Company always finished with a tune in tomorrow and then they would put like 4 words up on the screen and the sound would be like, woo, 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 and it would be all the syllables of the words and you had to figure out what they were. And I remember being too young to read and watching that show. So I've been watching the Muppets since before I could read. The Muppet Show comes out on television in 1980 and it becomes our family viewing. We watched every episode as a family. Gonzo was absolutely one of my early yogic guides to life. Gonzo is the misunderstood performance artist of the Muppets, and he's so pure. I remember buying the Muppet movie album and hearing Gonzo, I am going to eat a rubber tire to the flight of the bumblebee. And so understand, my dad was an animator, but he animated so that he could do work for 3 months and then paint for the rest of the time. So I grew up with someone who did something weird and to no effect but to please themselves, because he didn't show and he didn't sell a lot. And so I understood Gonzo the first time I saw him, like, man, these are my people. Ralph, oh my God, Ralph is when Tested went to the Museum of the Moving Image to cover the Henson exhibit there, which you should go see if you are in New York, it'll just make your whole month to go look at that. Ralph is in one of the first cabinets you see, and I burst into tears seeing the original Ralph puppet. I said years ago to Bill Prady, showrunner and creator of Big Bang Theory with Chuck Lorre, and early on, Bill was a writer for the Muppets. And I said to him, I think that Ralph might be the only Muppet without neuroses. And Bill Prady goes, oh, absolutely. It's why he's the hardest one to write for. That's why you have to make him the bartender. I love that so much. Everything about the Muppets spoke to me. And what I mean by everything is the deep kindness that was infused at the very most basic bottom level of the Muppets. From the fact that when you're looking at Kermit's head, you're not looking at a cloth pattern. You're looking at cloth that is stretched around Jim Henson's big hand. Jim's hand was Kermit, not just the movement, but the actual structure. And as I have gotten to know Dave Goelz, who's a good friend and is Gonzo, and other Muppeteers and folks like Frank Oz, and I've gotten to talk to them about the origins of the Muppets and those early days. Every story I have heard has been one about how kindness and love of the craft and what they're making is what informed the entire Jim Henson enterprise from its origin until, I'm happy to say, today. Because we encountered the same ethos the moment we walked in. And I'm literally getting a little choked up talking about it. When I was starting production on Mythbusters Jr. and Savage Builds, it was the first time I was solo in charge of an enterprise like that. And for advice, I called up Narain Shankar, the showrunner for The Expanse. And it was specifically because I was so we're so gobsmacked every time we visited the Expanse. And we are now close friends with so many of those crew and cast. We built friendships from that family because it was a family. And that amazed us, that you felt the same amount of pride from the Carpenters to the lead actors through that whole set. And I knew that a lot of that stemmed from Narain's show running. And I asked him if he had advice. And he said, it is the best job in the world. You get to set the culture with every response you have to everything, for better and worse. And when we walked into Henson's place in LA earlier this year, it really felt like we were standing on the longest tail of a creative genius who also had one of the biggest hearts you could possibly imagine. And here is the long tail of their output being carried forward by subsequent multiple generations of geniuses with great heart. Oh, sorry, I'm getting excited about this because it's a great concept. Light and Magic, the Disney Plus documentary about the founding of Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's special effects studio, purpose-built to make Star Wars and change film history. Light and Magic has, in its opening chapter, the incredible story of how John Dykstra built the Dykstraflex to shoot motion control for the first time in a feature film. And it is an astounding achievement. And there was discussion in the documentary about in addition to the incredible achievement of there also being some friction between Dykstra and members of the crew. And they talk about the fact that when George moved ILM from Van Nuys, I think, from LA up to the Bay Area, that they didn't ask John to come, and he had complicated feelings about that. And that's totally understandable. Absolutely. But I feel like what I was witnessing there, look, I don't know the original narratives. I don't know these players. You know, I've met a couple of them here and there. So my version of this reality could be completely off the mark, but I feel like what I'm seeing there is George prioritizing a certain kind of harmony in the workplace. And I say that because when I finally showed up at ILM 20 plus years later in 1998, I found an amazingly loving workplace full of people who loved their craft, were proud of what they did, shared their information within reason. It's a union shop. There are all sorts of fiefdoms, all sorts of stuff, all that interpersonal drama that can happen in any kind of workplace. All that existed, to be sure. And the model shop was a really special community. And I feel like when I was watching Light and Magic, I felt like I had directly experienced the long tail of decisions George made in the 70s. What was the original question? Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.